This is the tutorial for Chapter 1, Section 2, titled Order of Operations and Evaluating Expressions. Let's take a look at our first problem here. It asks us to simplify this expression, and it's just a numerical expression. So we're going to follow order of operation, which goes this way. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division from left to right. So it depends on which one comes first, and then addition, subtraction from left to right. So I'm going to go ahead and follow order of operation, which says that since I've got some multiplication exponents here separated by subtraction, I can do both of these at the same time. I can go ahead and multiply the 4 by 4, or square it, and then multiply 17 times 2, which gives me 34. So from there I can go ahead and subtract. And so when you subtract, make sure you borrow from the 3, change that to a 2, and you can see how you're getting 18. Moving on to the next one, here I want to do what's inside the parentheses first. I'm going to divide. And so that leaves me with 4 to the third power minus, and then here I have to do exponents first. So 10 times by 9. So I can go ahead and, since they're separated by subtraction, do them at the same time. Exponents here make 64 minus 90. So on this one, you're going to end up with a negative number, but when you do this, you got to make sure the bigger number is on top when you do that subtraction. And so this leaves me with 26, and it's negative 26, there's my 26, because we've got more negatives than we have positives. Looking at this one, I want to do the work inside the parentheses, and we actually have two grouping symbols here. This is a grouping symbol as well, this fraction bar. So I'm going to subtract these two numbers on top first. That leaves me with 15, and down below I have 5. And so now I'm going to go ahead and do that division, which makes 3, and then cube that answer. And so 3 times 3 times 3, it's not going to be 9, it's going to be 27. So remember, that's a common error I end up seeing, is people say, oh, 3 times 3 is 9, but 3 to the third means 3 times 3, which is 9, times by another 3, which makes 27. So in this one, we need to do the innermost parentheses first, and this innermost parenthesis is just showing some multiplication between the 4 and the 5. So we're going to do that first, because the exponent's outside the second set of parentheses. So that makes 20 to the third power. And so remember, you're going to do 20 times 20, which ends up giving us 400, times by one more 20. So 4 times 2 makes 8, and then you just got to bring down those 3 zeros. So 8,000 is that answer. Over here, everything is subtracted. We've got subtraction here and then division. So exponents are going to work first, and so this ends up making 32. And then I bring down the minus sign. This makes 16 divided by 4. So from here, I'm going to do the division first, and so that leaves me with 4. And then I'll bring down that minus sign and the 32. Do the subtraction, leaves me with 28. Moving on to this next one, same as number 12, I've got to do the work inside the fraction bar, on top of the fraction bar and below the fraction bar first. And so that leaves me with 18 over, and then I subtract there, I get 12. Now I'm going to go ahead and reduce this fraction, take out the common factor of 6, and that leaves me with 3 halves. And then I'm going to raise that to the fourth power. So when I do this, I'm doing 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. That goes on top of the fraction. Down below, I do 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So when I multiply those 3's, I get 81. Multiplying the 2's gives me 16. And that would be my answer. So let's take a look at the last couple types of problems. Here we're evaluating the expression. So we're going to substitute 2 in place of the s, 5 in place of the t. So I have negative 4 times by 2 squared plus 5 to the third divided by 5. So first thing I'm going to do is the exponents here, and the exponents over here. So I've got negative 4 multiplied by 4. Over here, now on this one, we could do something a little bit different. I've got 5 to the third, and this is 5, and since I'm dividing, I can reduce the fraction, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it doing the order of operation that I mentioned before, which is going ahead and doing the exponents, so I get 125. Then I'm going to go ahead and do the division and the multiplication, because they're separated by this addition sign. So negative 16, and here we end up with 25. So now we're ready to subtract, and I'm subtracting because they're opposite in sign. That leaves me with positive 9 as the answer. since I have more positives than negatives, and that's why it's going to end up being positive. So looking at this next one, again, I'm substituting into the expression. So 3 times by 2 times 3 on top. Down below, I've got 11 minus 5 times 5. And then I'm going to put parentheses around it and square it. So I multiply what's on top. So that makes 9 times 2 makes 18. Here I have 11 minus 25. So I multiplied first, then I'll do the subtraction next. So I still have 18 on top. And doing that subtraction leaves me with a 14. And so I'm going to go ahead and reduce that fraction now. And when I take out the common factor of 2, that leaves me with 9 over 7. And so from this point, I can go ahead and square both of those numbers. And so when I end up squaring the 9, I get 81, and squaring the 7 gives me 49. So 81 over 49. Looking at this last one here, it says, every weekend Morgan buys interesting clothes at her local thrift store and then resells them on an auction website. If she brings $150 and spends S, write an expression for how much change she has. And so what we're going to end up doing here is taking 150, and it looks like she spends S dollars. There's my expression. So I'm just going to subtract these amounts, 2713. Now if I was subtracting 2713 from 150, I have to make sure I line up those decimal points, and then I have to borrow. And so I'm borrowing all the way back from the 5, changing it to a 4, 10 to a 9, this 10 to a 9, and so when I do the subtraction, I end up with a 7, and this makes an 8, and then I put the decimal point there, and this ends up making a 2, and a 2, and a 1. So $122.87. And see, it makes sense because if you look at it, 13 plus 87 gives me $1, and then I have 27 and 22 gives me 50 or 49, and $1 plus 49 makes 50, and that's where I'm getting the 150. So this next one, I'm subtracting 55 from 115. So let's see if we can do it without actually doing all this borrowing. So we're going to think about what do we have to add to 14 to make $1. And so if we do that, we know we have a 6 here, 6 cents to make 10. And then if we add 8 cents here, or 80 cents, plus the 1 makes 90, plus the extra 1 from this 10 here, ends up making $1. So that's going to be the change left over. Now if we take 55, now we're thinking of, okay, well 55 from that would be 45. We've got to take 1 more from that, so it's 44 to make that $1. So if I add on 86 and 14, I get $1. And this makes, actually this should be a 10, so let's fix that real quick. So let's change that real quick. This should be 94 instead of 144. So we've got 94 here. Oops, erased it all. So let's fix that real quick. So this is the 55.14, and this should be 94. So let's see if it works. So 86 and 14 ends up making $1. We've got our 5 and 4 makes 9, plus the 1 makes 10, and then this ends up giving me 14 plus the 1 makes 15. So that would be our answer. So $94.86. So those are the types of problems that we're going to end up seeing on today's assignment. Good luck.